to the iCloud. There we go. So thanks for joining me. I'm Larry Steinhauser. I am a member of the board of directors of Amherst Neighbors and come out of the field of healthcare. My work over 40 some years has been in rehabilitation and psychology. And I've had opportunities to work with folks in so many different ways. But the last couple of decades were tied to assisted living in Massachusetts and in New England. So it was a unique opportunity I fell into in the late 90s, fairly young industry. A lot of people are sort of learning about it as they need to. And it just seemed like it might be a good idea for Amherst Neighbors members. And as we can see, there's some 25 of you have sort of signed in to learn a little bit about assisted living. So if you think about options of where one could live, you've got your own home. And as JJ was saying earlier, as we were visiting, my goal is to stay in my home. That's what all of us want. Sometimes that works to the end and sometimes it doesn't. So it's just good to know what my options are along the continuum if I can't stay in my own home forever. Some people know independent living in different terms, but independent living would be, a community of older adults, seniors, elders, designed to make life a little bit easier, but you still have your own apartment. And some of the independent living settings, it might even be a small house or townhouse type of situation. But others, it's an apartment in a large building. Typically, independent living is not really providing day-to-day services in the same way as assisted living, and I will explain that in much greater detail as we go along. You can cook your own meals in your own kitchen. You can do your own laundry in your own laundry machines. You come and go in your own car and so forth. So it's just the maintenance that maybe you're having to deal with in your own house is no longer an issue. They're cutting the grass. They're taking care of things that maybe break a plumbing issue or electrical issue and the like. So independent living becomes an option for people that just want to feel like, I need things to be a little easier, but I want my own independence. For some people, they'll do that for a period of time. And then as they age up, somebody referenced about having parents in their 90s. And, sometimes you hit bumps in the road. You hit an issue, a medical issue, strokes and or a medical problem or a fall with an injury that's significant and so forth. So in that scenario, sometimes some of the independent living scenarios, as somebody asked earlier, will offer assisted living in your own independent living apartment or in your own home. That's a little trickier to coordinate and usually involves outside services. More often, you're going to be moving to an assisted living apartment. And I'm going to get into a lot of detail about assisted living together with you over the next hour or so. There in assisted living is also an option for memory care. Memory care neighborhood or unit, depending on how what it's called, is still a part of assisted living. And so as we get into the definition, you could think of yourself in a traditional assisted living apartment or an apartment that's designed for folks that have memory challenges up to and including significant dementia of one kind or another. Not to confuse you too much, but there is something called a CCRC or continuing care retirement community. And continuing care retirement communities, they're kind of known for having all of these along the continuum for you. And you might start in independent living and might stay there till the end. You might end up in assisted living. You might end up in memory care. And in fact, the last piece of the puzzle is skilled nursing. So many of you going back decades are familiar with nursing homes in more current lingo or language, they're referenced as SNFs or skilled nursing facilities. And that, right or wrong, is certainly an option at the end of the continuum for people that need that level of care. And as we talk further, I will be able to help you understand some of the differences. Our focus today is on assisted living. In the chat, before we started, I wrote down, just for your information, and anybody who wants to, jot it down, I wrote down about the Massachusetts Assisted Living Association. It's an organization that's been around about as long as assisted living in Massachusetts, and it's a great organization. It's the trade association. It's for consumers, and it's for the folks that run assisted livings. I wanted to read you a paragraph of how they define assisted living, so you can just kind of take this in. What is an assisted living residence? Assisted living residences are highly flexible, supportive housing communities that offer older adults apartment living, an active social lifestyle, and staff support for activities of daily living, the basic personal care activities necessary to care for oneself and to maintain independence, such as bathing, dressing, grooming, and mobility. They offer meal preparation, medication management, and transportation are among the other key services most typically provided. These resident-centered supportive services are designed to meet needs that are both regularly scheduled and unexpectedly needed. So, these residences are the next logical step in the continuum of care for those adults who do not require complex medical care, but want some support in an environment that prioritizes freedom of choice, independence, and quality of life. So that's kind of the way that the industry of assisted living defines itself. The laypersons like us can just say, okay, it's an apartment. It's a small apartment, much smaller than your home typically. It's some 200 square feet on the low end, like a small studio efficiency, to maybe 600, 700 square feet, a couple of rooms, a living room and a bedroom, and maybe even a little kitchenette. So you kind of have everything that you need in assisted living. And the beauty of it space-wise is there are a lot of common areas that are in the building that are meant to be used, by you. It's an extension of your living environment. You typically get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you're getting 3 meals, whereas in independent living, usually it's 1 meal a day that comes with the arrangement, typically dinner or supper. You typically will get housekeeping and laundry support, usually 1 time a week. But most assisted livings will, for those that need more than that, have some kind of a menu where if you need more than that, you can get more than that. Assisted living will definitely have activities that are being offered, and the care staff are providing activities of daily living. That's an acronym, ADLs, or activities of daily living, you want to be comfortable with and familiar with, because it's the bread and butter of why people, JJ, it's why people leave their home. Sometimes you just get to a point where as hard as you want, you just can't do it all yourself anymore. And so you're looking to get the support in a smaller apartment arrangement where staff are there 24/7. So there's care staff in the environment around the clock. And if you're in trouble at 3 a.m., you hit a pendant or you pull a cord, and somebody's going to come talk to you and figure out what the issues are. The care that's provided is hygiene, grooming, toileting support, ambulation, mobility, transferring, like from bed to chair for those that have that kind of a challenge. I will tell you that there is a complete range. Often people might move into assisted living and have very little need early on. But over time, things happen. You've seen it. You've seen it in your mates, your friends, people you know, your parents. So these life changes require a level of care. And the beauty of assisted living is that a care plan exists for each person that's going to focus on the unique challenges of that individual. Probably the most common need that people do have early on or eventually when they're living in assisted living is medication management. So folks that move into assisted living, sadly, are often on a lot of medication. Not everybody, but some. And I've seen, 10, 11, 12 different prescriptions or more. It's a lot to manage. So it's very helpful that there are staff who are willing to do that if you cannot. You can choose to do your own if you can, but that will be assessed by the nursing folk, and they'll make sure that if you need the help, it'll be provided to you. There are two different kinds of medication programs in assisted living. One is called self-administered medication management, acronym SAM, S-A-M-M. SAM, or self-administered med management, means you're taking your meds and all we're doing in the assisted living is tickling you with a reminder. So yeah, if you're not muted, it might be helpful to mute. So with the SAM program, somebody's actually coming into your apartment and they're going to say, "Good morning, Miss Smith. It's 8 a.m. I'm here to remind you to take your 8 a.m. medications." Almost every assisted living works closely with the pharmacies. These pharmacies will deliver the meds in very unique packaging by day, date, and time. That's pretty cool. It takes the, oh my God, what did I take? What didn't I take? Because if you take 6 pills at 8 a.m., isn't it nice that they're packaged in a sleeve? All the pills, 8 a.m., what they are. And then the person who's reminding you is not dispensing. They're just saying, this says your name, your pills, 8 a.m., here you go. And basically you get into a rhythm with that around the clock. It's a nice offering. For people who have a greater level of challenge, there's something called limited medication administration, which needs to be done by a nurse, also known as LMA. But limited med administration is where a nurse is actually going to come in. When you hear me say come in, I mean literally come into your apartment. One of the unique fluky things about Massachusetts is that the medications must be stored in the resident's apartment. That is not the case in every state. I'll talk briefly about regulations, but Massachusetts is unique in some ways. And that's the biggest, that your meds are stored in your apartment. So we might have a locked box, in your pantry, and the nurse would come in and help you to actually take your medication if you need that level of support. So what I will tell you is, because of the regulations, the staff of the community of the assisted livings are not allowed to give injections. You can have outside vendors, home health, come in and give injections. They're not allowed to adjust the settings on your oxygen. If it's set at the right level, they can help you put the apparatus on, but they're not allowed to adjust the dial. It's a fluky thing because in most states, it's acceptable to do that in assisted living, but not in Massachusetts. The brief history around that is that in the early 90s, the nursing home industry was very powerful, very potent. They were quite threatened by assisted living. If you take off all your hats and just think of the business side, they were concerned about losing their customers. What is this new thing called assisted living? So as a result, as the regulations were put together, they were very careful to differentiate assisted living as being a more social living model, different from a skilled nursing facility that is known to be of a more medical model. So that's what's behind some of the issues, like somebody who's diabetic and needs injections, you know, probably in 45 of the 50 states in the country, that's a no-brainer to do an assisted living. Nurses are trained to do that. But in Massachusetts, you got to coordinate with family, friend, or an outside vendor to come in and do that. It's a bit of a wrinkle that's unique to our state. So who are the people that work inside of assisted living? Okay, I'm going to run through some very typical positions or titles, and just so you're familiar, because if you're going to go shopping, you want to know who to be buddying up to in this process. There's always an executive director. It's required by the regulations. It's often somebody who's, you know, been trained in the field. Sometimes there are people that used to run nursing homes, kind of like the assisted living sector better. They like the social living model more than the medical model. But there are people from hospitality, a lot of different types of backgrounds, because they need to be all things to all people. It's a lot of customer relations, a lot of working with families, and of course the residents themselves. They oversee virtually everything. There's going to be a business manager or an administrative assistant. They're the person to go to with billing questions, and I will get into what does this cost shortly, but they oversee billing and they oversee human resources, and good for you to know they oversee a CORI, or a background check, that's done for every person that works. That is a requirement. Every employee that works in the assisted living sector must have a thorough background check to make sure that they don't have felonies in their background. The person you're likely to see first is called either a director of sales or a director of community relations. Regardless of the title, their job is to work with you as you come in and have a lot of questions to help show you around and orient you to the community. And in the end, they know you're shopping 3 or 4 or 5 different places because there's a lot to choose from. And so there is some sales that is involved in that process, because they really want you to come move into their community. In a little bit, I will go into more detail of things you should look for in that process. There's always a nurse on the team. The nurse is kind of the person that does that initial assessment to make sure that you're going to be successful to come into assisted living, and they often coordinate the care. Okay. They also oversee that medication program that I referenced earlier, because it kind of falls into a medical component. If you have a memory care unit or neighborhood in the community, in the assisted living, there will be a memory care coordinator or director. And of course, if that's the area of the building you're focused on, that's the person you want to be knowing really well. There's somebody overseeing the maintenance of the building, because you can only imagine how many toilets get plugged up for people putting things down that maybe they shouldn't. And you know, just issues turning apartments over and being ready for a new family, a new resident that's coming in. They also coordinate fire drills and a lot of other safety features. There's a person who's over food, and food, by God, is without question the most.
800 here.
Hey, Ricky, would you please mute? Thank you. The dining service coordinator is over the food component. Food is hard. There's no 2 ways around it. You all cook in your own house. You know what you want. You know what you like. And back to an earlier comment, put yourself as 100 people under one roof and try to be happy all together. Some people love it. Some people do not like it at all, and everything in between. But a very important variable, because it happens 3 times a day, every day. There's an activity coordinator who also is critical to the social life inside of the assisted living. They're overseeing, you know, hopefully a good array of offerings that include music and art and exercise and spiritual components, outings in the van, holiday celebrations, and the like. So critical component to life in an assisted living. The most important people in my mind are the caregivers. Bottom line, I would say over and over, you're only as good as the care staff in the dead of the night. Because if you think about it, for half the day, there's a lot of managers around and the care staff, 7A to 7P. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., it's pretty much care staff, maybe a nurse till midnight or so. So they're your bread and butter. These are certified nurse assistants or certified home health aide type folk. So they get their 75, 80-hour training, a certificate. They have to maintain their certificate and some continuing education. But this is the field they chose. There's a significant shortage out there, as most of you have heard. And honestly, they make or break a good assisted living. So vital that you get to know your care staff when you're living in these settings. Briefly, the individual service plan that I mentioned, it's critical that that not be a boilerplate. This needs to be very specific to the individual, you or your loved one. And it should be reflecting your medication program, what activities of daily living you might need, meaning that hygiene, grooming support, bathing, showering support, and the like. Social interests, what you like to do, making sure that the care staff are encouraging you to participate in those activities. And very important, family involvement. That care plan should be something that you as a family member would know about, are invited to to care planning meetings. If you're involved with an assisted living that never reaches out that way, that's a sign of something to me. In selecting an assisted living facility, typically, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, we've got a lot in the Valley. I mean, if you go down to Springfield up to Greenfield, a couple dozen probably. So there's really a lot to pick from. You would typically see that director of community relations or sales. You would sit with them. This is what should happen, because you don't want a boilerplate response to yourself. You want them to know your situation. Then they should walk you around to see things that relate to your situation, your need. Within that walk, you really want to begin to tune in to a lot of things. You want to listen. You want to smell. Okay, you want to take in the ambiance, so to speak. So you want to see apartments, whether it's a model that's set up for, yeah, I want to look at a studio apartment. They take you in and show you a studio. Maybe there's an empty apartment and you want to look at that. Should be okay. Sometimes you might even say, I want to get a feel for how somebody adorns their apartment. Is there somebody that you could show me this 2-room apartment? And they should be able to do that so that you get a good sense of it. You want to observe the staff interacting, because like I said, if you see care staff that are aloof, that are kind of not engaged with the resident, that's a sign. How are they trained? Are they just twiddling their thumbs till dinner, or are they interacting with the residents? These would be things that I would be looking for. If you like a place, I would strongly then encourage you to show up unannounced and say, you know what, we've really been thinking this place over quite a bit. So they don't know, there's no dog and pony show. You're catching them live and in color. And maybe, whether it's from your initial tour or your more spontaneous pop in, you might end up asking to have a meal to get a feel for the food and a vibe in the dining room of what the interaction is like amongst the residents. Sometimes by walking around a few times, you'll see other family members who were in the same position you might be in, trying to make a decision for yourself or for a loved one. Nothing wrong with going up to that person and asking them what their impressions are. You'll hear sometimes the good, the bad, and the ugly from people. But these are some little things that are big things. And certainly, of course, you want to get more detail about pricing. and be clear what things cost based on what you're looking at. And that should happen, after the touring, where you sit back down and now you're, because in the end, you are comparing one community against another. And it's not an easy decision. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you just, like, this is the place I'm going to go. You like the vibe, you like the people, they're engaged, they were trained properly. What's it all about? You're living in an apartment, you're living in an apartment building. You want to feel good being there. So you want to do the things that will maximize the chance that that will happen. In terms of what's it cost, it's really varied and it's quite a range. Partly because it will depend on the size of the apartment or the type of the apartment, and partly because you have to make decisions around, with their help, what level of support you need. So there's price points or a cost for the apartment. Some people move in, they need nothing more than an apartment. They brush their teeth, they wash themselves, they shower themselves, they dress themselves, and they know where the meals are going to be offered and where the activities are going to be. That will range probably anywhere from $3,000 a month to $8,000 a month. You go, what? That's a big range. Well, the $3,000 on the very low end would be where some people who have economic issues and need to stretch those dollars will make a decision to go with companion living. That means you're in an apartment that's got 2 bedrooms in it, and you're sharing the apartment. It is a way to be more economical. And since you don't want to be spending a lot of your day in your own apartment, you want to be coming out to the common areas, the living room, the activity room, outdoor walks, the dining room, it's doable. Some people make that work. And that could be a $3,000 a month kind of moment. People that are like, and this is most people, no way in hell am I going to live with somebody else. I don't know who they are and so forth. So they want to start individual by myself in my own apartment. And so that's what most people do. Some people just end up living a hell of a lot longer than they thought they were going to live. And now they're thinking about stretching their finances. And then they start to get a friend, they get to know somebody, and they may decide to downsize into a companion living apartment. That's fine. If you're going into your own apartment, then you've got decisions to make. It's already frustrating that you've had to leave your house or a larger apartment type setting, and you're downsizing significantly, as I said earlier, space-wise. Now you got to decide, am I coming into a studio efficiency? Basically 1 room, it's got my bed, my side table, my bureau, my favorite chair, my favorite TV, a kitchenette likely, a little mini fridge, a couple chairs to sit in, have a snack, whatever. I mean, that's pretty much what the efficiency looks like versus a larger 2-room apartment where one's a living room and one's a bedroom, in addition to the kitchenette, the bathroom, and so forth. So, that's why it could become 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000. If you get the largest room with the best view, you're on the high end. If money's not an issue, some people, that's the direction they go. So I wanted you to be, realistic about that. The thing you have to keep in mind is, for most people, when they let go of their home and they move into an assisted living, you've got to think, what do I spend in a typical month now? Because you're not going to be doing a lot of food shopping. They're giving you the 3 meals a day. Okay, they're doing your laundry. They're doing your housekeeping. So it becomes close to most everything, probably other than some medical bills. So if you need services, I mentioned earlier about medication program. Let's say you need that self-administered med management. It might be another $500 a month. If you needed limited medication administration, it might go up to $1,000 a month or a little more. That's for the med oversight, but what are you getting for it? You're getting, first of all, a preferred provider pharmacy is bringing the meds in. You don't have to be thinking about that. and you're getting somebody to assure medically you're getting what your docs have ordered. So there's value in the program if you need it. And then the other big expense would be for care. If you're not able, let's say you had a stroke, half your body's working, but half isn't. You now need help going to the bathroom, taking a shower, getting dressed. You need a level of support that's greater. You're going to see the care, that's going to range from about $1,000 to $3,000 a month. So this is why, as you're managing your monies, you want to be sure you don't try to select an apartment that's too big and too expensive if you know you need some of that money for meds and care. I would say the only other expense, I knew it as a community move-in fee. I think some of the laws have changed around it. It might be called an admission fee or an evaluation fee, but most communities will have anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 as a one-time cost for moving in, for the work they do up front. Not every assisted living charges that, but it isn't uncommon to run into it, so I wanted to mention it to you. I will say, and you probably already know, Medicare, Medicaid they're not going to touch this. By and large, Medicare is unrelated to your living in assisted living. Medicaid has a very small program called Group Adopt Foster Care for people that really are living at a low level financially and they need support from the state. Some assisted livings have entered into that relationship with the state. For Group Adult Foster Care, you'd have to kind of just research or Google Group Adult Foster Care to learn more about that program. But it's a very small percentage because the reimbursement is so poor from the state. It's not worth a lot of the assisted livings doing it financially. They can't make it work. So with Medicaid and Medicare, not much in the play. 90+% is private pay. Most people own a home, they sell the home, if they got equity in the home, it becomes a piece of what helps them live for several years in many cases. A small percentage have long-term care insurance. And while long-term care insurance originally was for home health and nursing home, it has evolved over the years and now is being used in some cases for assisted living as well. But it's more about, 5%, 5 to 7% probably of the people that live in assisted living have that. I think the premiums are so high, a lot of people have not gone in that direction. But it is an option for some. A couple things I want to mention before we open it up for some questions. I mentioned MassALA, or Mass Assisted Living Association. Hopefully on the chat, the number and websites there. They really do have a lot of good information. It will help you shop. It'll have every community that's certified in the state. It's listed there. So you can see and you can do some comparison before you go into the building. There's some demographic profile on every community and it's right on their website. So it's a good tool to know about, and there's people there to answer questions about a lot of things related to your decision of what to do. In Massachusetts, I mentioned earlier, nursing homes are federally regulated, okay? And they're run by the Department of Public Health that will come in and do annual surveys related to running a nursing home. In this state, in Massachusetts, it's Executive Office of Elder Affairs. Executive Office of Elder Affairs is known as EOEA. Everything's an acronym, of course, but they're the ones that oversee our world of assisted living. They certify you before you have your first resident move in, and then they're required to come every 2 years to recertify you. So they also will come if there's an incident, because there's a requirement to report incidents of certain types. And if they're concerned, if there's any kind of alleged abuse or a serious issue, they're likely going to come and do an incident survey or an incident review as well. They have ombudsmen, just like DPH does. And the ombudsmen are all about resident rights. So they would work with you if you had a concern or an issue specific to your, your assisted living. They would be helpful in that regard. What's important to EOEA is that early on, that whole issue of technically, we're an apartment building that provides social support and activities of daily living. You are not a medical facility. That's how the industry birthed, so to speak. But the problem that we've run into is, look at what's happened in healthcare. So if you think to yourself, used to spend days in the hospital having a baby, used to spend days in the hospital having surgery. If you think about how that's all changed, a lot of people have their baby and go home. A lot of people have surgery and go home. I mean, it's evolved. And what's happened is the medical complexity has changed over time. People, as JJ mentioned early on, really prefer to stay in their own home. And they're going to do that till as long as they can. What does that mean? It means that people are waiting longer. They often come in after a crisis. They are more medically complex. People that used to live in nursing homes are, by profile, the kind of people that sometimes you will see in assisted living, because the truth is they're there for the activities of daily living, the shower support, the dressing support, up dressed, groomed with my medicine, now I'm off for the day. And that happens in assisted living. What gets complex is if you need skilled care, if you need a skilled level of care that would involve more complex wound management or injections of medication on a regular basis or significant management of oxygen. That's where the rubber is going to meet the road, and the state's going to be like, I don't think you should be doing that in assisted living. This person should go to a skilled nursing. So that's where we run into some issues. But the truth is, from the 90s to the 2020s, this has been the evolution of the industry. They are caring for more complex people than you would expect. In the early days, they would have been horrified to see equipment that actually will, mechanical lift equipment. But some assisted livings now have that, meaning you're medically so compromised you can't do it yourself, and it might injure the staff. If they don't use mechanical equipment like a Hoyer lift, that will actually get you up and allow for some care to be done in a way that's safer. Not every assisted living will do that, but some do. That's why you got to shop carefully.
I wonder who Donnie manages.
I want to briefly mention memory care. In assisted living, it's true, there's a pretty high percentage of folks that have, whether it's mild cognitive impairment or more full-blown dementia, whether it's a Alzheimer's type, whether it's a vascular dementia from a stroke or a CVA. Things happen. There's a need, and most assisted livings have a area of the building. Sometimes they'll call it a unit. We called it a neighborhood for the company that I work with, but it's designed and the staff are trained to work with people that have that particular challenge. They're amazing people that work in these settings. You need the patience of a saint. You're going to hear stories over and over and over and over, and it's perfectly okay. They've got activities, they've got food, they've got music, they've got a lot of the things that are happening in any other part of the assisted living community, but the programming is designed for people with dementia. There will be a security component that is often unique, that being a keypad entry or a way to assure that if you're living there and you have mild cognitive impairment and you want to take a walk, that you can walk where it's safe, that you're not going to go outside in an area that is no longer secure. So typically the neighborhood or unit will have secure features at the doorways in, and often will have an outdoor space that is secure as well, meaning a fence with a keypad or the like. But they're usually nicely adorned. They have special regulations within Executive Office of Elder Affairs to assure they're run properly and staffed properly. And by the way, as I'm meandering and drifting, if there's questions, either write them down and ask them in a minute or two, but or put them into the chat, and we can retrieve them that way for those of you that are comfortable working with chat. Why do people leave assisted living? So there's 3 primary reasons people leave assisted living. For us, the most common was they passed away. The beauty of living in assisted living, this was their last apartment. It was their possessions, their bed, their furniture, their pictures of family on the wall, and they lived there till the end. And they leave because they passed away. In a good percentage of cases, hospice may have been involved. And I'm going to touch on who comes in to help, but hospice is a great support. They support people that live in assisted living that need that level of care. It's a nice connection that is made with hospice. The second reason people leave is because they run out of money. So I'm not going to deny that some people lived a hell of a lot longer than they thought they would. You know, my uncle's 97. He was sure as hell going to be dead at 68. Why? Because his father died at 68 and his father's father died at 68. He thought for sure he was going to be one of those. I just helped him celebrate his 97th birthday. People are living a lot longer than they expected. That's why you got to be smart and prudent in managing the financial component as you go in. You got to appreciate the common areas and not overdo the spending in case you're going to live longer than you thought you might. So some people, when they run out of money, medically are eligible to go to skilled nursing. In skilled nursing, when you run out of money, this is where Medicaid will pay. It's a fault of the system. It's been that way. It's a bit of a dinosaur. There's a lot of politics that go into it, but Medicaid will fund skilled nursing. And in very small ways do they touch assisted living comparatively. It's a sad statement that somebody's got to spend down, get onto Medicaid, and then move to a nursing home because that's what Medicaid will pay for. Some people have the money, but like I mentioned earlier, all of a sudden they've got medical issues that are really profound, and their struggle is so significant. They really need skilled care in that they need somebody 24 hours a day that's a nurse in the environment. Nursing homes have that. Assisted livings do not. Assisted livings have certified nurse assistants 24/7. They do not necessarily have a nurse in the environment around the clock. A few do, most don't. That's where, if you know you need that level of support, that's where a skilled setting becomes important, becomes one of the reasons people move out. And a much smaller reason would be behavior. You know, every once in a while, it happens. I mean, whether it's mental illness or whether it's a very challenging dementia, the safety of the residents is first and foremost. In a very small percentage of cases, the behavior of a particular resident may become problematic, that they need to exercise the clause in the contract that says, I can give you 30 days notice to move out based on the challenges that are before us, just like you can give me 30 days notice if you decide you want to go somewhere else. And I meant to mention that earlier. One of the nice things about assisted living, it's not a forever. If you don't like it, leave. You just give them 30 days notice. I will say our company was 30 days, most are 30. There are a few that are 60 days. You got to look at the language in the contract. That would be another variable to look at when you're shopping. But it's as simple as giving notice, you know, because you found something better, and you don't need to apologize to anybody. If you're not happy, you should find that. So you might see some outside services that come into assisted living. For example, a beautician. There's usually a beauty shop in assisted livings. A licensed beautician will come in. There'll be set days. A lot of people enjoy that. And I can tell you candidly, the compliments that I would give some of the folks that came out of the beauty shop, it reminded me of my mom. I was like, you know what? You can see them beaming, like, because you know what? They're not getting as many compliments as they used to. They come out, they feel good, they feel refreshed, they look good. So your beautician becomes a big deal in the assisted living. Of course, you could go out to one of your own as well. Home health is often involved for people that have unique needs. I'll give you the most classic example. You moved in, you're living there, you're doing great. You fall, you broke a hip. It's very common, sadly. You maybe need some surgery to deal with the hip. You go to rehab and come home to your assisted living apartment. When you come home, typically home health is going to be involved. That'll be a nurse, physical therapist, or an occupational therapist. So they would come in. Sometimes, for example, we might see somebody that looks like they're choking on their food more than normal, and they may have a swallowing issue. We could call a speech and language therapist to come in from that home health agency because they do that kind of evaluation. So there's good reasons to have home health connected. Hospice, I've already mentioned, is another service. Sometimes mobile mental health will come in. So a good assisted living will have a connection to a licensed clinician, and they will come in and have a relationship to deal with depression, loss, and whatever the issues might be. In some cases, it could be around behavior management with dementia, but a mental health connection is good. Other mobile medical, you might have MDs. There is an increasing number of doctor practices, geriatricians. They've made their business now going to assisted livings. Come in, they might see 10 or 12 people. It's kind of a win-win. It's good for you to have that source coming in, and it's good to know you don't have to schlep out to go see your doctor every time you need to do that. Some assisted livings have mobile dentistry, mobile hearing, mobile labs, and mobile x-rays. These would be things to ask about what have been developed, because you want to minimize going out if the physical disability issues are greater. If you can go out to some things because you can, that's great, do it. The last thing I will mention is that, what are the typical challenges that exist for people in assisted living? Staffing. How many of us are seeing signs in front of every assisted living or skilled nursing setting? Frankly, every dining, every restaurant, everything. It feels like now hiring. Well, this was an issue before COVID. Okay, there was a concern that 10,000 people a day are turning 65. Okay, think about that. The continuum of folks living longer and the volume of older adults is growing. The need for more caregiving staff, more nursing type staff is profound. It was already an issue before COVID. Now, everybody's struggling. So, it's hard work to be a caregiver. It's a lot. They deserve a lot more than they're getting paid. But the problem is much easier jobs at McDonald's and, virtually up and down the street are paying the same $15 and $16 and $17 an hour. But a few years ago, that was like $12 to $14 an hour. I'll tell you, I know a lot of care staff that work 2 jobs to make ends meet. And I've met some amazing people. Just, you got to love them. But staffing is an issue. Food, I've already mentioned. Food's the hot button issue. They're required to do a customer survey every year by regulation. Without question, the number one concern or issue in almost every assisted living I've touched, and there's been many, is food. It's just a hard win. I'll talk to people, and within seconds, I will hear the soup's not salty enough. The soup's too salty. it's too much spice, not enough spice, too hot, too cold. It's just tough when there's a chef trying to do a good job in the kitchen and a whole bunch of people that used to make their own meals sitting around the table. So that's a forever. There's no magic. You do the best you can. Family customer expectations, they should be dealt with right up front. Getting to know the people that are in your community in the assisted living setting. Helping to appreciate there's a lot of people under one roof. And as I mentioned, the other challenge is the medical complexity issue, which we've talked about. The last comment before we go to Q&A. In summary, to me, a good assisted living would have these traits in mind. You can feel it. They would encourage independence of the residents that live there, meaning they're not doing things for people that they can do themselves. Because that's really critical for all of us. I just mentioned earlier, my 97-year-old uncle, he uses a walker. He's got real mobility issues. Mind is good, body is failing. He gets into the car, and every single time I'm the gentleman, I just want to close the door for him. And he'll just say, I've got the door. I've got the door. Just leave me alone. And it's a little thing that's a big thing. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, he's fiercely independent to the extent that he can be. And sometimes we forget. Another trait, that they enable freedom of choice, that residents have choice. And that includes in Dementia neighborhood, you know, Mary, do you want to wear the blue dress or the brown dress today? You know, maybe the mind's not working real good, but you know what? You can look at a red and a blue and say, well, I want that one. I mean, you encourage freedom of choice as much as you can. Maybe you show the plates. We're cooking chicken and a hamburger today. Which do you want? And you're maximizing that choice. Probably the most important thing, and it's sometimes harder to talk about, but it's a feel. And it's, for me, it's preserving dignity. Dignity is an interesting term. What does it mean to feel dignified? What is that about? Okay, it's little things all life long that have made us who we are. You know, it's feeling good about ourselves. It's the job, it's the car I drive, it's my relationship. But these are the things that for some of the folks that are living there get taken away over time. So what are the little things that become big things to preserve dignity, help people feel good about who they are? Celebrating individuality, making sure that people are uniquely treated. Individual service plan, not a boilerplate, not one size fits all. Nurturing spirit, nurturing the spirit. What is that? Some places will have a dog, like, you know, pet that you can enjoy being with. Some will bring music and art, like life flow. Some will make sure there's religious services of one kind or another because it meets the needs of the residents and it feels good to the resident. So things that make you feel like you're nurturing spirit, like you're alive, that's really important. And lastly, involving family and friends. So family are often the ones making a decision, trying to be helpful, feel guilt-ridden in the process. They should be involved. They can come and go when they please. This is not a hospital when there's visiting hours here, there, and yonder. You can come because your loved one lives in an apartment and you're welcomed. You should feel that. So that's my 1 hour soup to nuts on what assisted living is in Massachusetts. But there may very well be a few questions or thoughts or reactions, and I would want you to feel free and comfortable to ask those questions. I'm taking a very quick peek at the chat, and let me see what's in here. I think.
I don't think there's any direct questions.
Okay, that's more, at the moment, there's more informational things in the chat. But feel free to unmute.
We've got a couple of hands up, Larry. We've got Sherry Wilson has put her hand up.
Yeah, that would be helpful because I don't see everybody because my screen only has 25, and I think.
So why don't we start with Sherry, and then Alyssa also has her hand up.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you very much, Larry. That was very, very helpful.
Good.
I wish I had heard you 2 months ago before I made some decisions. I'm happy with my decision, but
Good.
one thing that puzzled me when I was looking for a future place.
Yep.
I live in a condo now. I've already downsized. But there don't seem to be very many CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities around here. It's either independent living, independent and assisted,
Yeah.
or assisted in nursing home. And some of them didn't appeal at all,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find a
I
good
think you're right.
source of,
I think you're right.
finding out a continuum.
I think the only one that I know of in Western Mass, and I think Reed's Landing in Springfield is the only continuing care retirement community in the Pioneer Valley area. I could be wrong. Some of you might know something different, but as you said, a lot of places have independent living and assisted living and memory care, but they don't have the skilled component. They usually will have a partner up with a nearby nursing home, but it's not quite the same. One of the communities that I did oversee was a continuing care retirement community up in Maine. There are quite a few more in the Boston area, but not out here. Yep.
Well, thank you. This has been very helpful.
Good.
And very well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
And then who was the second one?
Alyssa is next.
Oh, hi, Larry. It's Elisa.
Yes.
Is there any guidance specifically for people who don't have family who can be expected to help deal with this?
Yeah. In the field, because of the way things have grown, the new profession birthed in the 1990s called geriatric care managers. I knew them as geriatric care managers, GCMs. If you Google geriatric care manager, you're gonna stumble onto it. I think they've even evolved further with their own titling and within their profession. These people are trained to be guides. They get to know all the assisted livings, all the home health programs, all the senior center, adult daycare, skilled nursing. And then they kind of figure out with the individual, what do they need, and try to help guide. They also usually know the financial landscape really well. So they know about what Medicare will do, what Medicaid will do, et cetera. They become a good source.
So basically we would hire them
Yeah.
as a consultant.
Correct. The analogy is you go see a counselor because you've got a
Right.
concern, you feel bad, you pay them 50, 70 bucks, whatever it is for the hour. It's similar.
Yep.
They're gonna charge by time, but it's not like a lawyer. If you go to, estate attorneys and some law practices, they might do similar things, but the lawyer fees tend to be up in the many hundreds of dollars on those hours. This is a more reasonable price point.
No. Thank you. Very useful.
Great. All right. We have Charlotte is next and then Elaine.
Okay.
Yes. Is there any system for rating assisted living, like Bluebell Heights or something is rated A or A to D or 1 out of 5?
That's a great
Something like
question.
that?
It's a great question, Charlotte. The industry, and it's funny, the people that want that are the regulatory people. The Executive Office of Elder Affairs has been talking about it, but it is not developed. In the skilled nursing sector, it is developed. They actually have a star number rating. But again, those are federal regulations. And so it's parallel across all 50 states. And you have 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, whatever. The closest you could come, but it's not really a formal rating to compare one to the other, would be to ask for a copy of their last survey. So at least with that, you're getting the objective review of professionals that do nothing but go to assisted livings and evaluate whether they're meeting the regulations or not. And you can see specifically the areas they've been asked to work on. And everyone has something to work on. They don't give free passes anymore. They don't give like, you're perfect. You just don't see it. So it's more, that would be at least one approach. And I think the community is required to show you that if you ask. It's a
So
matter
you
of public record anyway, but the easiest way to get it would, if you were touring and you were really seriously considering, you'd say, you know, I learned that you all get surveyed every couple of years. Would it be okay if I take a peek at your last survey? It's a matter of public record anyway. So if they are comfortable giving it to you, that's a good sign. If they're not, well, there may be a reason.
You can't get that from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. You have to ask.
You
facility.
could potentially do it either way.
Neither
Yeah.
did Cheryl Wilson. She's
I'm
here.
saying to you that you could potentially get it from the executive
Cheryl
director
Wilson,
of the
yeah,
community you're looking at,
in pink.
or you could get it from EOEA directly.
She was in our babysitting
Yeah.
car.
Yeah, she said, I just,
Next question.
All right, and we have, and if you're not speaking at the moment, could you please mute yourself? But the next person who's got a question is Elaine.
Yeah, apparently, what happens, I'm sorry I was late for this presentation. I hope it's recorded.
It is.
When you run out of money, you go on
Yes.
Medicaid, correct?
That is true. When you run out of money and you've hit the end, and I've had some very sad scenarios of people that lived in the assisted living for 10 years. And, you know, the family will calculate what they spent and make you feel pretty bad, but sadly, you just can't give it away. And when you're,
Well, that's an interesting circumstance because the person has no place to go.
well, they're eligible, they're usually eligible for long-term care in a skilled nursing setting by age, and Medicaid will pay for that.
If they're not impaired,
Correct. I mean, let's just say based on age, I've yet to see somebody that doesn't have a diagnosis that wouldn't work their way into a skilled nursing situation. It would be rare. It would be rare that you're so healthy and well that in that scenario, you probably wouldn't have gone into the assisted living to begin with.
and by the way, do you know of any good skilled nursing places?
That would be a topic for another day. And the answer is no, I do not know. My world was assisted living, and I don't really know the lay of the land on the skilled side. It's a more complicated question.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Next person is Pippa.
Pippa,
Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
oh, there
Hi,
you are.
everyone. Thank you. So, hi, I posted this question in the chat, but I will say it verbally.
Sure.
So I have heard that if you're in assisted living and you anticipate a decline and will need skilled nursing sometime in the future, that it might be a wise decision to, if you are eligible, to transition to the skilled nursing facility before you completely run out of money, because you will have more choices. Because if you wait until you have no money, there are many skilled nursing facilities that say, oh, sorry, we don't have a Medicaid bed, look
Mhm.
elsewhere.
Yes, that is, I'm gonna say, to me, it's both rumor and fact, meaning I think there's some truth to it. Here's the problem. Occupancy issues are pervasive in the industry, both in skilled and in assisted. So there's a lot more bed availability, partly because of COVID. For 2 years, it's been bizarre and strange and a whole different landscape. So a lot of the communities have availability. They'll take it one way or the other. But normal times, I think your point is well taken. It's true. If you've got some means and you're spending down and it looks like you could see the end of the line, even in a few months, I wouldn't go out to a year or half a year. That's a lot of living that I'd be preferring to be in that social living environment of assisted living. But if you're seeing, within a few months, you're just not going to be able to write that last check. To connect to a skilled nursing setting as a private pay will get you a nice apartment and get you in, and then they will work with you on the spend down and eligibility to get onto Medicaid. They already know that 75, 80% of their lifeblood is state Medicaid. Every nursing home will complain forever that they're not getting enough money from the state Medicaid, because it's true. The rates have just not kept up. So it's not their preferred money is on the Medicare side, on private insurance, and lastly, Medicaid. So there's truth to Pippa's point.
Not seeing any other hands in the chat, but people may, there's JJ. has a
JJ,
Question.
oh, you got to unmute, JJ.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Very, very helpful. However, I'm wondering whether you would particularly have a program just for family members to ask questions, for family members to get involved in a different way.
I need a little bit more information as to, and what, give me an example.
No,
No,
Can I
Um,
jump in here?
if-
So,
yeah,
Mom?
if I were a family member and going in with my
we're
Yes.
having some technical problems, JJ. Either the internet connection or something's not as good as it should be, because we can't hear
Go
what you're
ahead.
saying.
Yeah. Mom,
It's
can
not-
you ask the question one more time? No, it's not coming.
I think she freezes up, or like your connection occasionally does too.
Same computer.
There you
Um,
go.
Is this any better?
Little bit.
Sometimes if you turn your camera
I
off, the
just
sound is better.
wondered if there was some way that family members,
We'll have to table this one unless you know what the question is, Caroline.
maybe Caroline can ask the question.
I'm guessing that I do know what the question is. And I think my mom's suggesting it's a hard thing when both.
Okay, any better?
It's her mother.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to know if there is a program that families can ask.
Yeah, okay.
So most often it is families that are shopping with a loved one. That's the most frequent thing that we experience. The potential resident and a loved one is coming in. If there's memory care challenges involved, then typically it's the family without their loved one. So, the family has a gigantic role in trying to make the right decision. That's why it's important to factor in a lot of
My
these.
mother.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Oh,
we
one
have
more question from Susan.
Susan.
Lisa. Yeah, my question is whether there might be any kind of listing or registry or information to find out about retirement communities in the state or in the region.
Well, the directory, this directory has every assisted living community in it, and it is online on the website that I put out at the beginning of this conversation.
Is that the Mass ALA?
Yes. So
Thank you.
you
When we
can
get
get
to
a
the
guide
point
there.
for shopping, yes. I hope
Um,
that soon.
Yeah.
I hope we can manage here.
Okay, we're getting toward the end, so mute if you're not asking a question, please.
Margaret?
Also,
It'd be living in that
I know,
teeny little
Margaret Hepler, can
somebody
you
else's
please mute?
bad food and,
Hello?
people all around you all the
Well,
time.
talk to Sarah, see if she.
I just muted her. Okay, so I note that about once or twice a year, the newspaper puts out a good directory for the Pioneer Valley. And so it's in the newspaper. Usually it's, I believe it's the Springfield Union News or whatever it's called. I always keep it because I'm always curious, but it's quite comprehensive. It's actually, this one was in the reminder.com. So the reminder.com, if you Googled senior living options in Western Mass, has a pretty thorough listing of every community and the contact people. So that would be another option for the local, even though these same communities are listed in that Mass-ALA directory. So,
Thank you.
Larry,
Yeah.
I have a weird question. I may be the only one with it, but I'm a state retiree. I'm not eligible for Medicare. So if I were to spend down, would I be eligible for Medicaid in a nursing home? Or would they throw me out on the street?
Medicare and Medicaid are completely different. Your eligibility for the state Medicaid program is based on your financial means.
Ah,
And Medicare becomes more of an insurance question.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I wouldn't be on the street, presumably. Thank you.
No. And I see the Pat Brinkman? Or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been great. And Susan, your question was my question about whether there's a complete listing, because I looked at the Mass-ALA and it's a membership organization. So there's ones that I know about that are not in there. And I'm looking for, are there assisted livings that are more integrated with the community? There's one in I think Newton, it's part of the Swedish, it's called the Swedish Home or something. And it sounds totally charming. That's the kind of assisted living that I would love to move to now, actually.
So it's an interesting question, Pat, because some of the assisted livings, some have developed their existence tied to like a local college. As some have developed like on the grounds of a hospital. I mean, it's really varied as to who they've chosen to buddy up with. Most are freestanding, and those kind of relationships are coming from the local, influences for where they've been built. So, in Western Mass, I'm not sure, other than Reed's Landing might have a connection to Springfield College, but
yeah.
I'm not sure because all my work was in the Boston market and up toward Maine. Don't know the local players as much, but yes, probably about 95 to 98% of anybody that's anybody is in the directory of Mass-ALA.
Okay.
But there probably are a few that are not. And you could, you would hope in this day and age, they all have a website. So if you Googled assisted living Western Massachusetts, you would begin to get anybody that's anybody, in that approach.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Ann.
I just wanted to make the point that nursing home eligibility is dependent upon states. In many states, you cannot just decide because you've run out of money to go into a nursing home. You have to be in need of nursing home care before you are eligible to be taken into a nursing home in most states.
Yes.
I don't know Massachusetts, I know about New York State with that. And
No,
the second piece of information I just wanted to give you was some years ago when we were looking for some place for my mother-in-law, we found that Loomis Village in Holyoke had freestanding apartments, separated little houses, a nursing home and an assisted care facility, all kind of grouped around the parking lot. So we knew that as her needs changed,
Yeah,
she could go from one to another.
that is correct. Loomis has all the pieces of the puzzle. There, I don't know that it's defined per se as a continuing care retirement community, but it functions close to it. You're correct. You're correct that there are skilled levels of need to get into long-term care settings. My point is that if you've been living in assisted living, you've got issues or activities of daily living needs, and now it's years later and you've spent down, you're likely not gonna have a problem. We never had a problem getting people moved to skilled care because they had enough issues that we were working on that the next level was gonna be able to work with as well. Yeah. I think we're close to the end of our time. Is there any final question from anybody, or are we good to summarize that we're done? You see anything, Caroline? Okay, so I thank you so much for being a part of this interaction. I appreciate your kindness. I know it's good to learn about things. Hopefully we'll never need it, but if we need it, it's good to be educated around it. And reality is some of us over time will need to know more about it. So thanks for your interest, your questions. It was a great interaction.
And thank you, Larry, for all of your expertise and your 42 years of knowledge that you shared with all of us today. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.